Welcome back to the ManTFup podcast. I am KimmyB.
And Lenny.
That's right. My goodness gracious. I feel like it's been forever, Len. But before we go any further, let me remind everybody that you can watch, follow, and listen on pretty much any and every social media and streaming platform available. We are on Google, Spotify, Apple, iHeart, Buzzsprout. There's another one. Pandora, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. So there's absolutely no excuse. Again, please like, subscribe, follow, and share. Now, Len, I got to be honest.
You missed me? Are you being honest with yourself?
Define missing. I'm just kidding. Yes, Len, I always miss you. I miss you. I miss, producer, videographer, director of photography. I don't know. Nestor wears all the hats. I miss Nestor. But I've realized that it's probably a lot quieter when I'm not here in the ManTFup man cave. Because,
Maybe.
We get around each other and it's like.
Well, I think we need that every once in a while.
Is it called gaslighting? Is that what it's called? I gaslight you.
You try.
You try to get, no, you definitely gaslight me.
You usually come in here with some, loaded whack shit.
Like a loaded tweet?
Yeah, with some crack that somebody put on the internet.
Now why is it got to be crack?
It's crack.
It's not always crack. All right, so.
It's crack if you're smoking it.
I'm still, at this moment, before we jump into this topic, debating of whether or not I want to go down this road with you right now. But I figure, you know what? It's ManTFup. Why the hell not? So, you know me and my Twitter feed. I love to do some scrolling, and then I love to bring the tweet of the week.
Wait 1 sec.
What?
Listen, if you want to contact us, feel free to email KimmyB@ManTFupTV.com.
You're such a dork. He just hasn't said that in a while. So.
Absolutely.
You good now? Can I move forward?
Yeah, I think so.
Tweet of the week came from a man named Joe Walsh. He's a politico, very middle of the road. I think he had run for office at some point in time. You would appreciate him. I think everybody can kind of, if you like middle ground, if you want to hear both sides of the story, he brings on people from all walks of life. He has his own podcast. But he put out this tweet on Valentine's Day. I don't know why you would do this on Valentine's. Clearly, he did not have a Valentine. But it said, when it comes to American history, teach our kids the good, the bad, and the ugly. Teach the truth. And the truth is, when it comes to American history, there's plenty of good, bad, and ugly. Just teach the truth.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that he tweeted that in that way, because I think you and I have had that conversation a million times, right? But obviously, a lot of folks don't feel that way, and I still can't wrap my brain around the fact that some people think history is subjective.
Well, I mean, it's who's telling you the history. Is it the written history? Is it it's very difficult to say what history is, okay? We know this country was built on the backs of immigrants, slaves,
indentured servants,
everything.
Yep.
It's been built on that. This country has been built on it. The Chinese were here.
Yep.
Building railroads.
Yep.
I mean, that's what this country was built on.
Literally being left to die in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, right, wrong, or indifferent. It's all part of our history.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you could probably trace bloodlines back, to a lot of these people who did these wrongs.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not today.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what's going on today. Today, we need the middle ground to kind of,
I feel like, though, today we need the truth.
Yeah, the truth.
Because you know how many people don't know that, Lenny? Do you know how many people don't know that, during World War II, we interned Japanese Americans? We basically rounded them up on the West Coast in particular, following Pearl Harbor.
And Hawaii.
And put them in, I know for sure, but what? In Hawaii.
In Hawaii. That's where
the West Coast, and they were,
Japanese were a big population of Hawaii.
I get that, but they also had a big population in San Francisco, in the Pacific Northwest.
And they got rounded up.
Rounded them up like they were doing in Nazi Europe. And we took away their property, we locked them away, and we did it under the guise of treason. We did it under the guise of espionage. We did it under the guise of,
Yes. Listen, the way it was handled was wrong, but post-war, they were, given their belongings back. They were told we're sorry. There was a lot of versus what happened in Germany, where they're still trying to collect up the people's belongings
for
today.
Sure. Hunt it down, try to
Yes.
art and
it was, I mean, they were, it's the same as.
But teach it.
It has to be taught. It has to be taught, and I can't 100% say that it was all wrong at that time in this country, because they were a very, very small minority.
Mm-hmm.
They were new to the country. The country was attacked.
But we were supposed to be. That's.
I understand we were supposed to be better. I mean, it
that
wasn't
is xenophobia.
like
that is 100%.
They weren't starved. They weren't, they weren't beaten. They were put in an internment camp. So they weren't. It's a little different. It's a little, hey,
They
sorry.
were American citizens, though.
Yeah, I get it. It's not. It's not that it was
Americans.
right. It's not that it was right, because there's been plenty of treasonous American citizens.
Yeah, January 6th. I mean,
Yeah,
imagine if we went and rounded all of them up and stuck them in a camp until the end of the quote-unquote investigation, because, they laid siege to the Capitol.
Yeah.
So with that being said, we didn't do that in 2021. You know what I mean? We didn't round folks up. We didn't. 2021. I'm losing my years. But the point is, it's one of those things where we just need to do a better job of teaching it all. It doesn't make me any less American. You know what I mean? It doesn't make me love my country any less. I just want to know the truth about it, so that when people have a chip on their shoulder, you can't. We talk a lot, especially, off camera and off the mics, about how did we get here. And when you don't understand somebody's history, right, fully, you can't understand why they feel the kind of pain that they feel, or why they're as outraged as they are. So if we stop teaching it, or we try to, put up barriers to telling the truth, we're never going to find middle ground. Because the only way to understand why people are upset about systemic racism or about, bigotry, and it is to understand where that comes from. It's to learn how long it's been going on. I had somebody tell me recently.
It's been going on thousands of years.
Yes.
But
everywhere. But we're a new country, right? Like when you think about America, like people laugh at us. There's a documentary on Netflix or HBO, and it was about a Chinese company that came to Ohio and opened up a glass factory, right? And this was, at the height of everything shutting down there. And it was like, oh, they're coming to save the day. And bro, they translated what they was saying about us. They were like, these Americans are fat, they're lazy, they're stupid, they're slow, they got fat fingers, they break the glass. And then they cracked a joke. They were like, this country's not even 300 years old. And and when you're from China, you get to laugh. You get to say that because your country is how many years old?
Yeah.
Like, how many dynasties can you go back, pre-communist China? It's, but again, understanding, you have to start
Understanding
somewhere.
history
Yeah.
in general is very important, okay? I think, and it's not only racial, it's socioeconomical.
100%.
That they're making our kids dumber in public school. They're taking things away from them that, who the fuck doesn't have physical education in school? How do you not make a kid get off his fucking ass and do workout? How do you take social studies off the curriculum? These are core things. And there's no set thing, because you have different teaching in Texas, you have different teaching in California, you have different teaching in Florida, you have different teaching all over. There's no set curriculum. You want to teach a curriculum that educates the United States as a whole, you need a curriculum that educates the United States as a whole.
Yeah.
Not, Podunk's curriculum versus New York's curriculum
sure.
versus Iowa's curriculum. They're all different.
And you can't have an elite curriculum, for the few kids that, have access to that. I guess what again, like I see a tweet like that and it just makes sense. Like, why are people so afraid though of hearing the truth? I don't, because there's a lot of people pushing back against statements like that, right? They don't want to teach history that could quote unquote make people feel guilty. Well, let me be very clear here. A history teacher can't make you feel guilty. Guilt is something that you feel internally.
Yeah, I understand that, but I don't necessarily think it's.
You don't think what?
I don't feel guilty about what happened in this country. I don't feel guilty that I'm a white male in this country. I don't feel guilty about that because my grandparents came here in 1907 and they were persecuted because they were Italians. It's not. It's.
They weren't enslaved because they were Italians, but they were persecuted. I mean, they definitely got pooped on. They definitely had to fight harder for jobs. There was definitely discrimination. For sure.
I can't fall into the slave thing repeatedly because the Jews were slaves in Egypt 5,000 years ago. Every conquered land has had slavery.
We brought them here, though. Like, every conquered land usually enslaves
They were
the
delivered
people
here and
that
sold
are there.
here. I get it.
So that's different, though.
But
like,
they were conquered and brought here. I get it. It's not different than any other slavery. They're still.
They weren't. We didn't go and conquer. Like, it wasn't like one group went into Africa and okay, we're not. I can't. Like, that's not what happened. There's a very big difference between what happened in the Ottoman Empire and with the Greeks and with the Huns and with the Romans and what happened starting in the 1600s. It became capitalism and became a business. You take people.
I get that.
You know, like
I get that.
The better example would have been gladiators.
You know,
right? A
Shanghai,
lot of them
the whole thing. It's still happening today, Kimmy.
Yes, we have human trafficking.
It's still happening today. So,
but that doesn't negate what a very large piece of our population went through. I'm not telling you that you need to feel quote unquote guilty about it, but you do need to acknowledge the privilege that comes with it. Like, that's all. Like, I don't understand why this is such a difficult thing for people to wrap their brains around. Like, I'm a woman, I'm still considered a minority, but I know that I have a distinct advantage over a black woman. Or
not if it comes to government work.
I don't even know if you were trying to be funny with
I'm not trying to be funny. I'm going to tell you a real story, okay? In 1996.
Okay, so we're talking almost 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I applied for food stamps. I needed them. We were, whatever the situation was, I needed them. Okay? I didn't have income. I didn't have a lot of money. I needed them. You know what they told me? Your car is too fucking new.
Sell your car. You'll have food.
And I can't drive to work. I mean,
well, now you know what it feels like to be a poor person.
This is part of the problem, and it's not anyone's fault other than the powers that be. But this shows you that it's stacked against them because it's easy for a person of color or a minority to get welfare. It's easy in this country. It's not easy for a white person. I'm telling you right now.
I disagree.
I went through it.
I disagree.
I went through. They had no reason to deny me. I didn't have any fucking income. I had a kid. I needed money. I needed food. I'm not like I'm applying for anything crazy. How about $100 a week for food?
My cousin got food stamps, so
I get it, but they turned us down.
And he was.
And the reason they turned us down is they said your car is too new. Now, what kind of fucking crock of shit is that?
Yeah, that sounds like some Miami crock of shit. That's what
Broward. It was Broward, but whatever.
Sounds like some South Florida crock of shit. But how do we get on food stamps when we're talking about education?
We're talking, well, you know, because we went down that rabbit hole of inequality in this country. Okay, and it's difficult. It's poverty versus, you know.
But we've also discussed, like, there's members of this team. Even if you take criminal activity, like, we talk about certain things, and it's like the fact that you didn't get arrested for some of the things that you've done in your life, or the fact that you got away with a warning or a slap on the wrist, a lot of that plays into the color of your skin. So when we talk about the chips being stacked against you, you could do the same exact thing that a person of color does, and the likelihood of you getting the same sort of repercussions for getting caught are slim to none.
That's absolutely a fact. And that goes back to education of the police, education of the system.
So even still, if you understand, like, there's still that little bit.
Cultural differences and cultural things. I mean, Broward County Sheriff a few years ago said if you're wearing a MMA shirt, we're treating you as a fighter. We're treating you as a danger, a weapon.
So if they rolled up, if you were
were wearing an MMA fighting shirt,
okay, relax.
Broward County,
But yeah, what if you were in an altercation? If the cops had been called on you
anything,
and you were wearing
white, black, didn't matter. If you were wearing an MMA shirt,
and the cops were called on you,
yeah, and you were in an altercation, they're treating you as a weapon.
Okay.
So, you know, that's what they're trained. So when you have, it's very difficult, Kimmy, because I don't want to sound like, you know, I'm racist, because I'm not, okay? But when you have cultural things like I have cousins, wife beaters, you know, flip-flops, they're picture perfect targets for the police.
Okay.
Picture perfect. So if you're going to walk around and look like that and dress like that, it's the same as wearing an MMA shirt, because people expect
Len,
to cross the street.
But we're also talking about the black man in a suit getting pulled over driving a BMW.
Well, that's a different story.
That
happens too. Yes.
Because Len, you could be in a suit in a BMW with 10 keys of coke in your trunk, and even if you do get pulled over, they're probably not checking your trunk.
I feel you.
So when we talk about you not feeling guilty, I'm not asking anybody to feel guilty. I'm just asking people to acknowledge the privilege that comes with being of a certain persuasion in this country. That's all. Because if we can start there and just understand, okay, I get it. I've had a bit of a leg up. Even if you don't feel that I'm not saying you're a Rockefeller. I'm not saying, you know what I mean? Because you're not, right? You've had to struggle. I'm not taking away from anything you have done. You come from Kentucky. You know what I'm saying?
No, I come from Miami, by the way.
Okay, well, your mom is
My mom's from Kentucky. My dad's from Chicago.
Okay. But you also had time in Kentucky, did you not? Because you've thrown that one at me a time or two.
I've been there.
You didn't grow up there at all?
No. I grew up here, Dade County.
You claim Kentucky because when we get in these fights, you like to throw it
305
back
because I have a hillbilly heritage.
Okay,
yes.
So you're riding on your hillbilly
I'm
heritage.
part hillbilly.
But you're really
I'm part whatever.
Okay, well then don't.
My dad was from,
so see, that's
Chirac.
the problem. You like.
That's where he's from.
You just really do that.
It's true.
The views.
South side of Chicago.
The views
that's where he's
and
from.
expressions of Lenny are not necessarily the views, terms, and expressions of the entire ManTFup team. Just gonna put that out there. I can't believe you said Chirac. And
why?
Like that. That was ridiculous. Your dad. Anyway, I'm gonna shut up.
South side of Chicago's always been the South side of Chicago.
And he's a mobster.
I don't know what he is. First of all, he's dead. Something years.
Novelli.
Oh, see, what are you stereotyping me?
I sure am.
Fucking vowels.
We seem to like to do that here. We
vowels.
We seem to like to do that here. But my point being, there's nothing wrong with just admitting or owning, like, hey, life, even if life is shit.
Yes,
it's still not quite as shit for a white man.
I'm 100% about teaching our history.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% about, making people feel bad about what their great-grandfather did.
How does that mean?
But this is what people are taking from this, Kimmy. It's not necessarily what's being taught or the thoughts of the people who want to teach it.
It's okay to be empathetic. Like, that's the other thing, like, there's nothing wrong with
that doesn't come with the vowel.
Reading a history sentence, like reading a story or learning about racism and feeling badly for how humans were treated.
Absolutely.
It's not about placing guilt, but it's okay to have empathy and to feel that. But if you're not taught that, then you're never going to experience that. Do you know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah, no, I get that. I thought somebody knocked on the door. I thought I heard a knock.
They wanted to get in on the conversation.
I get that, and I get the things that I don't understand are, the actions like we're still doing all these atrocities to people that we did before, because we're clearly not. I mean, there's definitely inequality in inequality. Kimmy corrected me. Bad English, Lenny. Bad fucking Dade County education.
There it is.
Dade County
We
education.
need to do better. Clearly, socioeconomic.
Yeah.
Education's got nothing to do with color. Clearly,
no. And it's it's difficult for it. People are taking it to an extreme, just like anything else. And teaching history is great, and I think I'm all for it. Mm-hmm. I want it taught, but whose view of history is it?
But why not have everybody's? But do you understand what I'm saying? Like, why not?
Because you can't have everybody's.
But here's the thing: you can't have a white man writing on slavery. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, you can't have the oppressor writing about the experience of the oppressed.
There's enough of both sides that has been written long before this became a debate. Mm-hmm. To educate us.
Okay, it's always been a debate. What are you talking about? Like, you act like this just came about. Hello, no. There was an entire movement in the 50s and the 60s called the Civil Rights Movement.
Yes, but there's
a whole war fought because people have been debating about whether or not things are
There's plenty of ethnic authors who've written things about.
Yeah, but how many wrote the textbooks that we teach our children with?
Oh, listen.
You want to talk about those lists of books that have been banned from schools that are being burned? I mean, that's the crazy. But freedom of speech.
Yeah.
What happened? The same people yelling about freedom of speech and cancel culture are the same ones burning books, banning books. I don't want my child being taught. Like, it's wild to me. Like, if you're that fearful of what a book could do to your child, like if you're that, it goes back to what we talked about when we talked about college and the parents, oh my God, I sent my kid away and they came back a liberal. Like, if your child came back a liberal, they clearly did a little thinking and were like, hey, obviously there's not just one way to look at the world, right? And I'm sure there's plenty of kids that left conservative and come back conservative, like, yo, them liberal quacks at college was exactly that, liberal quacks, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, you have to let people make their own decisions. Some kids may feel horrible when they learn about slavery or injustice or, any of the other multitude of things that have happened in this country. I cry for the national anthem. I really do. Like, I love this country. I get teary-eyed. But at the same token, I can say that this is a country that's built on systemic racism. Like, I don't have to pick. You know what I mean? Again, I love this. They're not mutually exclusive. You can have both together. You can love this country and still say, hey, we've done some fucked up shit.
Yeah, there's no doubt we've done some fucked up shit.
Yeah, but...
get the fuck over it.
But teach about it. There's some people that don't even know about it. And that's on purpose, Len. And so you've got a bunch of people running around going, what are you mad about? Get the fuck over it. When it's like, nah, there's some real shit. Like, we're not past the 50s and the 60s. Lenny, our entire justice system is a shit show.
Yes.
Like, so
the country needs a little bit of
over it.
The country needs a little bit of a rework.
A little bit, Len. You want to run for president. The fact that
apparently fucking idiots can be president, I'm good.
This is where we're at, But on the flip side, we have we have infrastructure that needs to be fixed too. So yes, there's lots of things we need to talk about. And unfortunately, we were discussing this, and every time we discuss this, it turns into madness and chaos. But I agree with you in that it shouldn't be this divisive, right? Like, teaching history shouldn't bring up this much anger and animosity and outrage. It's crazy.
Yes. And again, this goes back to everyone now has a voice, and everyone's voice gets heard. Okay.
Heaven forbid.
And we had this whole conversation. I had this whole conversation.
I don't understand how is that
there
relevant to education and
listen,
history?
I'll tell you why. Because there's places in the United States that people haven't even seen a person of color. Still, to this day.
Yeah, which is why it's super important that we put this shit in books. Because they may not see a person of color, but they're supposed to go to school where they're supposed to be taught about things. So at least they can learn about people of color.
I get it, which goes back to... But this is how you can understand a little bit about why this is such a volatile topic, because there's people in this country who've never seen a person of color, who've never talked to a Spanish person, who never had to go into a store and go, I'll have that. And they go, huh?
Yeah, and what, have clearly not learned that they're as American as their white trailer park asses too. Like
I get
the
it.
problem, and that's why when we talk about education and we talk about teaching our history, we have to teach the whole thing. Like, Native Americans deserve to have their story told, right? Now, I'm not talking about Indians. Like,
they all deserve casinos.
Listen. The problem is some of them live in places where ain't nobody going. Doesn't matter how many casinos you put there. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going.
But they should get part of the other.
I'm not going to Minnesota. They should get part.
I think all of the Native Americans.
They should. It should be like revenue share.
Yes. They should all get it.
I'm here for
Listen,
that.
you fucking Seminoles, you guys got the fucking the mint.
Because the ones
you better share it with fucking the Navajos.
They left you in Florida. They shoved us over here in Wyoming. Like, get out of here. Yeah. No, I mean, that is actually really. If baseball can do it.
Listen,
if professional sports
I'll
can
tell
do
you
it,
what.
Figure it out.
The successful Indian casinos, whatever you want to call them.
Don't do that.
Whatever you want.
You've already said enough shit. You've already said enough.
The successful Native American casinos have plenty of money to support their.
They do. No, and that would be absolutely incredible, because there's also a lot of. But even with that, teach the facts. Teach the facts about the casinos in the sense of they have different tax regulations. They have different, there's a lot that goes.
There's a lot of things in this country
that are very beneficial, by the way.
Yes, there's a lot of things in this country that are not equal. We know that, okay?
But history shouldn't be one of them.
Opportunity. Let's just take Amazon, for instance. If you took Amazon and you put them in a neighborhood that's under a
Lenny, what does this
lake,
have to do with history?
I'm going to tell you.
Oh, okay.
I'm not. This has nothing to do with history.
This
has nothing to do with history. This has to do with This has to do with fixing our country.
So long as you can admit that. Okay, so this has nothing to do with the topic.
It does have to do with history.
Back to Amazon. Go ahead.
These juggernauts that are in our country can make a difference more than our government.
Yeah, if they paid taxes.
It's not about the money. It's not about the money. It's about the opportunity that they can give to communities. And what are you looking like?
Like what?
Like,
because we have Amazon here in South Florida.
Job opportunities, things, But again, it's not just one-sided. Okay, if we're gonna make a change, it's got to be everybody making the change.
You sit there and say you don't believe that a company like Amazon shouldn't pay taxes?
Because the taxes that they're paying are not going to benefit the people. They're going to get.
The problem.
They're going. I heard a little bird say something the other day about the $41 billion that the state of Florida has made off education, and yet we're fucking 40th in the country. I don't get it, because the money. I'll tell you why.
That's the real overhaul.
Because if Amazon plants a fucking warehouse in the middle of fucking Belle Glade, they're going to employ 90% of Belle Glade, and they're going to get those fuckers out of their trailers.
I love them.
I said 90% of the people. I didn't say 90 million people. They're going to.
I know, but that's
I'm just saying.
Guess what? Do that and pay taxes.
That's a direct.
They need to
that's
do that
a direct.
And pay taxes.
Well, they're going to pay property tax. They're going to pay those kind of taxes, and that's a direct impact.
Zero. Like, Amazon legit had like zero, and I get because
they got a good accountant.
But when you're
companies like that continually spend money, and they own companies that lose money.
I get it, but we have trillions of dollars in infrastructure that need to be fixed. So guess what? When you come into a community, then that should also be on the list. Fix the bridges, fix the roads, fix the sewage systems, fix all of that.
What we need to fix in this country is the fucking politicians.
Yes.
That's what we need. That's the main fix in this country.
That's the point that you made indirectly, was it's not that they shouldn't pay taxes, and it's not that they should just have a free-for-all. It's that, unfortunately, we're in a place where those taxes are going to grease people's pockets. They're just going back to the 1%, whatever the case may be. And that's where I draw the line, because I have no problem paying my fair share. Like, real talk. We live in an incredible country with incredible programs, and to your point, incredible services for when people fall on hard times. Does it need, again, an overhaul? Of course it does. But, that's the benefit of living in this country, right? Like, there's a lot of people that did get food stamps, and that helped them enough to make it through, and now they're doing
Yeah.
well and they're
Great.
thriving and they're paying taxes and they're giving back and they're spending, like that's the beauty of the American way when it works properly. It has just gotten so derailed. But again,
Absolutely.
we have people
Because there's no consequences. There's no and
But people's history, people also don't understand how this country works, Lenny, because we're not teaching them how this country
absolutely.
works. So they hear what they see on Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, Twitter with the dams. We can have that conversation too. But the point is, it all really does come back to when we talk about education and teaching history, like understanding how your government works, understanding why this country was the beacon of light for people around the world, why everybody wanted to come here.
This is a difficult thing to sustain. The American,
For sure.
the American dream and the dream of America. It's a very difficult thing.
Nobody's done
it because
not the Romans.
People all want to have their voice. People all want their feelings heard. People all want this. It can't work like that. It should work 100 times better than it does, but money has taken over this system that we so loved and that was so brought up. And if you look at the history of this country and the motions that were made throughout, because we talked about slavery and this and that, and this country was on a good path to become a very free and equal country at some point. And I think it probably kind of got derailed around the industrial age, probably somewhat, a little bit, maybe even a little later after that. It just, when money took over politics, it then became something different.
I mean, it also,
what?
It's another conversation. I mean, it got derailed when the white men in the South realized that Black folks were running for politics. Like that happened in like the late 1800s, and they were not. There were thousands of Black men in government in the South after the end of the Civil War and during early Reconstruction. And people know politics is power, right? So what do we do in that situation? If this is not good, they still needed indentured servants. They still needed sharecroppers. They still needed people to stay and work the land in order to maintain the economy of the South, right? Which was still agricultural. It was still all of those things. So they started to take away the power. You do that with poll taxes. You do that with, segregation. Now we see Jim Crow. When they wrote the 13th Amendment, the only form of legal slavery in this country is what? If you've been convicted of a crime. So what happened? You started to see lots and lots and lots of Black men ending up getting arrested for really silly things, especially in the South, because we still needed chain gangs. They still needed employment.
I get it. It's not fair. It hasn't been fair.
But you got to tell, like, Lenny, I'm talking to you and you're talking. Do you know how many people don't know this? You know how many people think slavery ended? And first of all, you know how many people couldn't tell you when the Civil War was?
A lot.
A lot.
Yes, and the education system in this country has gone.
This is why. What do they say? If you don't know your history, you're what? You're doomed to repeat it.
Yes.
So this whole conversation started because of history, and you and I have gotten into many a conversation more heated than this because you don't like.
I don't like stuff to be erased. I don't like the names of streets to be changed.
Well, that's. I mean,
I just don't like it. It's part of history. If kid, asks, "What is this?" Nobody's ever going to know.
That's an honor, though. Like, to have a street named after you, it's for good. It's because you did good deeds, right? Like, that's the reason why you have that. They're not erasing them. What they need to do is still teach about Taft, still teach about Johnson, still teach about all of these men. They're not being erased. They just don't have a street named after them anymore.
What's the old saying? One oops erases 1,000 attaboys. So, yeah, I mean, it happens. It's... those things shouldn't be erased. That's part of our history. Those are bad people that were part of our history. You think O.J. Simpson's ever going to get erased?
But he's not going to get a street either, my man.
Do you think he's ever going to get erased?
But he's not getting a street named after. We're not erecting an O.J. Simpson monument in the middle of downtown L.A. Like, it's not happening. In fact, they probably took statues down. It ain't never going to happen, O.J.
It might.
It ain't never going to happen, Orenthal. No.
It might.
Again, it goes back to that, what we were talking about.
I dropped out of school in 7th grade.
What is that? Okay.
7th grade.
Yep.
Okay. And the education I got from kindergarten to 6th, I think was better than most kids coming out of high school now.
Probably.
And I went to a Dade County public school, and I can't believe the things they're dropping. Now, granted, I put my kids through private school because I wanted to. But
what do they learn in history?
they learn a pretty good amount.
Okay.
They learn a pretty good amount of stuff. It's a pretty well-rounded curriculum, and it's not very, my daughter was making fun the other day because someone said the school is very diverse, and she's like, it's not very diverse.
Yeah,
and
love
I'm like,
Miranda.
it
She makes me, cause it's probably not.
No, it is what it is. I mean, there's plenty
Ooh,
of
they've got a handful of.
ethnicity in her school. Okay.
Sorry, sorry.
But now you made me lose my train of thought.
No, you
Kimmy.
said Miranda was
Email KimmyB at
joking
ManTFupTV.com.
just because it's But I love that she can recognize that it's not overly diverse. But the fact that it is considered that by some people is a testament to what you were saying before. There are people that if they don't move outside of their social circle, are never introduced to people of color, people from the LGBTQIA plus community. So
Yes,
I mean,
I understand.
that's why history is so important.
All right, so here's the flip side of the coin, and I'm not necessarily taking this
No.
because I'm a believer in it.
Oh boy.
But you go to one of those places where people are raising their kids in, a community that doesn't have any people who are gay. Mm-hmm. They might not want to teach their kids about that type of sexuality right off of the rip. Mm-hmm. Well, do you know what I'm saying? So there's a point where
if they live in
those
Florida,
kids
they
are
pick
going
the right state. That's for sure.
I mean, there's in religions, and when boys turn 18 in certain religions, they're encouraged to leave the little flock and learn.
Are you talking about the Amish?
Whoever.
Are you referencing Amish right now?
How about even Hasidic? And,
okay.
They're encouraged to get out of this nest.
Are
and
the
if they
women
come back, they come back. No, not really. Encouraged to leave and come and learn. So at some point, you have to say, look, we don't have to, coming from Miami, teach people about thems, theys, and the 68 other things that people relate themselves to. Hey, I'm a dog. Can I please have a pee-pee pad in my classroom? We don't need that to be taught to the whole country. What we need this country to be taught is the basics. They need to be taught math, English, history, the core values.
But you know that LGBTQ rights are a part of American history. You made the point that, people have been enslaved since the beginning of time. People have been gay, my friends, since the beginning of time.
And that's
for the record.
And that is a curriculum for a high school kid. That is a curriculum for, let's just say, your senior or junior social studies should be teaching
just
that.
understand that you teaching children about the LGBTQIA community isn't going to make your child gay. I hate to.
That's true.
I hate to scare you guys. I know that just reading and seeing things can be very frightening.
No,
but that's not.
Their uncle is going to make them gay. Or their priest.
Okay, that's the ManTFup podcast for this week.
Listen.
Thank you for adding a little levity to the conversation.
I have to.
But that's the problem, is that the people, I understand that folks who stand very strongly in their religious beliefs are going to feel away. I also know that in religion you're taught tolerance and acceptance and, judge not lest ye be judged. But I know we like to throw a lot of those things right out the window when it comes to things we don't agree with. Cool. But I take issue with the folks who think that that's what's going to, quote unquote, make my child gay. Like, no,
but
that's not.
But that, again, it's a small minority.
And you can't
with a
stop
large
it.
voice.
If they're going to be gay, your child's going to be gay.
They're going to be gay.
You not allowing them to understand that could literally lead to much more detrimental behavior on their part. I mean, and there's plenty of videos out there of families.
You better lock the sheep up. But that's not that.
Did you really just say that?
Well, you said they're gonna make more detrimental parts. You better make that a clip. Lock the sheep up. So.
Okay,
Why do you always get lost?
You don't usually. I'm not lost. I'm processing.
What are you processing?
You say a lot of shit.
That's just following up what you
No,
said. You're like, that's going to cause them to do more fucked up shit.
That didn't mean they were going to fuck sheep. My man.
Okay. They're going to become priests. I don't know. What do you want me to tell you?
What are you saying right What are you saying? Okay, you know what?
You didn't want to fight, so I got to do something.
I signed up for no, Len. We can fight.
No, listen. You're absolutely right, but those people.
But preschool, no. That I agree. I agree.
This country is broken up into factions of millions of people that have groups. You know, I told you we're advertising to that one group. That's an audience of 12 million people. Those 12 million people all have kind of the same beliefs.
But we're all American. This is what I don't understand, though. My question comes in this, like, why do we have such a hard time understanding that we're all Americans?
Yeah, well, that's a problem.
Like, because to me, at the end of it, like, that's the thing that I do. The Olympics were just happening, right? I love watching the opening ceremonies because I love watching the American team walk in because everybody else's team looks alike, right? They have the same kind of unpronounceable last names, and then you see the Americans walk in, and we've got Johnsons and Chins and you know, we got a little bit of everything. We got Novellis, we got Bells. I mean, literally, and it's like that is what this country is. We got black people, you know, that are competing on behalf of America, Chinese, gay, straight, white. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, we literally are the Benetton of the Olympics. And I just, when I see that, it's like that's what makes me so proud to be American. And then you have something like history that is dividing. Like, and I just don't get it because at the end of the day, we all still pledge allegiance to the same flag, right? We all still live in the same country, and we all contributed something to making it great. So why does somebody's history have to be better? And how does telling somebody else's history diminish yours? Because
you just hit the nail on the head. Because you're telling someone else's history. You're not just telling the history of the country. You're making it about a certain person or a certain faction or a certain thing. It's the history of the. I'm only listen. Don't jump down my throat. Okay, just hear me out. Okay, this goes back to how you broach a subject. Okay, it goes to that. So teaching history about how slavery was bad and how this country has had this and that, and not making it very specific and not making it, you know, because we had more than just black slaves in this country. We had Chinese slaves in this country. We had other things. We didn't have 4 million. And the others, I'm not saying don't tell their story, Lenny, but you cannot compare or equate. Telling the history of the country because of the country.
But you don't just lump everybody into under slavery. Like, you have to tell, but tell the whole story.
Why don't you tell the history of all the fucked up white kids that were fucking taught by their grandparents and their great-grandparents and their parents to be fucked up? Because that is just as fucking powerful as the other shit, okay? It's just as bad.
Yeah.
It's just as bad. The Southern Bible Belt thing.
Why are we not teaching that?
But it's the same.
Nobody's saying not to teach that. That's the whole
teaching
truth.
The history of the country as a whole.
Yes.
And not about a specific.
No, nobody.
issue.
But it's not about a specific.
Those people.
Nope.
Those people, Kimmy. Listen, those people that have been taught to be racist are just as much a victim as other people. Because they didn't have a fucking choice. They didn't have a choice as a kid to be educated and learn, and they're just as much a victim. They're just as much a victim.
But then as you grow, no. But that ends at a certain point.
Yes,
As you
yes.
grow up,
Sure,
and you
it should.
move on. Now it's different. If you stay in that environment where you never see people of color, then I can understand how you get stuck in that cycle. But again, it goes back to the parent who sent their conservative kid off to college and they came back. You have a choice as an adult to expand your
Yes.
horizons, to engage with other
And
people.
some people do, and some
to be
people don't.
open-minded when doing so, right? Like, hey, correct me. People don't like to be wrong. People, again, we say this at least once an episode. People don't like to be disagreed with. I'm here. I want to learn about the KKK, and we need to talk about the governors that have been a part of that, and how did that even come about, right? Teach that. Teach about upward mobility of different groups of immigrants, because it's been an uphill battle for everybody. The Irish, the Italians, you know, the Black community, the Asian community, the Hispanic community, the Malaysian community. Like, that's watching people ascend, and that's incredible to watch, because as a group becomes more and more integrated in society, that's when you start to see them move. But that's not to say everybody has faced some sort of discrimination in this country. But I want to learn about it all, teach about it all. When it comes to the Native Americans, don't sit there and teach that they sat down with the Pilgrims and made popcorn. You know what I mean? They were given blankets with smallpox. They were run out of their land. They were literally rounded up. They had their horses slaughtered. We killed millions of buffalo, all in an attempt to starve them out, because we wanted the prairies and the plains and everything else. But again, just teach it so that people understand why we give them casinos. Do you understand? Because then you have the people who don't know any better running around, well, why do they get this and they get that? Because we stole everything else from them.
Again, that goes to, you're saying that
teach that women couldn't buy anything without the signature of a man up until, what, 1950 something? I mean, it's wild.
Come to my house, you still can't. So... What? It's true. So
something to be proud of. Hang your hat on that one, buddy.
Boys. Listen, that whole thing was not perpetuated by every person. You know, there's always been leaders. You know, look at David Koresh. Look at Jonestown. Look at listen, people follow leaders. Okay? You have the leaders, you have the sheep, you have that, always. So that stuff that happened in this country was not perpetuated. Like, all the white people in this country didn't get together and go, hey, let's fuck the Indians.
Nobody is saying that.
They didn't do that. But yes, you're...
Why are you...
That's what it sounds like,
Kimmy.
Kimmy.
No, it doesn't. Why are people mad, though, that folks are demanding accountability
You just said
from our history book? That's all. No, because the issue is this. We had a
You just said
we had a black president, and now all of a sudden folks are up in arms, and now history, and why are you trying to, we don't need people to feel guilty, and you can't.
It's the pussification of America.
But here's my problem. Lenny, can you just step back for 1 second and admit that white men are feeling a little attacked, they're feeling a little inadequate, they're feeling like folks are coming for everything they've worked so hard for, and now you want our history too? So we got to draw the line somewhere. Like,
no, I just want it. You just explained it.
But what isn't equal about it?
You just explained it, okay? You just said it. You said they killed all the buffalo, and they did all this to starve the Indians out. Who was they? Was it every person that was in this country at that time? No, it was a few leaders with a few with a few soldiers that did this to those people. It wasn't the choice of every person in this country to do that.
But every person in this country has benefited from it.
Yep. You're right.
So, I mean, but that's all it takes, is just acknowledging that we benefited from the misfortune of others. That's all.
Yeah.
And then when you can look at it that way and go, oh, okay, like, you know, if you really do the stats on the AAPI or the Native American, they're not good, right? Like, the average life expectancy of a Native American man on most reservations is like in the mid-50s. The average life expectancy for a white man in America is, again, education, resources. They have high levels of alcoholism and drug addiction. They had their history. Yo, if you can't understand that, when you strip everything away from people, their culture, their history,
Let me ask you a question.
their land.
Is that the same statistics on reservations that have an economic
Actually, I mean, it's not a whole lot. I mean,
so what are they stripped of?
but again, but what? But Lenny, they just got casinos, so that has already been ingrained in you. You go back to the point you just made the case for white kids who don't know any better because they were taught and
You're right.
So if you grow up in an alcoholic household, right, and now all of a sudden you got a casino,
but let me ask you this:
what are the chances?
Whose responsibility is it now to educate those American Indians or Native Americans? Whose responsibility is to break that cycle?
Oh, that's
whose responsibility is
it?
And
I 100% understand where you're going with this, and you have to take accountability. You know, that's my favorite word.
Listen,
you have to take
this
accountability.
country is got communities, always has. It's always been segregated, whether it's black, white, Polish, Italian, Irish, okay? And those communities, okay, have to be responsible for their cultural heritage to be taught, for their somewhat, I get it, okay? This is America.
But that's what I'm saying. Now you're going back.
But
you say this, that's the problem. Because everybody in this country, and I'm proud of it, you're proud, like, we love to know where we come from, right? But if you go to Germany, they're all Germans.
No, I feel you.
So they all fall under the German education system. You know, they share.
Yes, we need a national education.
They share a similar group of core beliefs.
That's never going to happen.
But so if you're talking about Native Americans and you're on a reservation and education has never been a priority for generations because you haven't had access to it.
By the way,
what?
They're not in America. They're on a sovereign nation.
Yeah, you're right.
So,
but you live where if you cross a street, now you're in America and there's schools and there's U School and Nova and this. But if that's not what your people prioritize, right? And I'm not speaking to the Native American community and saying they don't prioritize education. I'm not Native. I don't know. But what I'm saying, I'm giving an example that if that's not what your people prioritize, right, then how do you break that cycle?
Yeah,
like you've never
tough.
had the resources. But again, so that goes back when we talk about the black community, when you've been perpetually, in an uphill battle. How do you break the cycle? Because to your point, there's many kids in disenfranchised communities that never leave the blocks,
confines of their community.
You know what I mean? So there are kids that live in Overtown that have never been to Miami Beach. Like that shit blows my mind when I hear stories like that. Kids that live in Hollywood, I'm sure that have never been to Hollywood Beach, right? Like something that many of us just take for granted.
But this is all, it's part of what needs to happen in this country is people need to take responsibility for their own communities. You've talked about it before.
We are a community. Like, so our community, guess what? Lenny in Hollywood, that's your kids, that's the black kids, that's the Latino kids, to me, that's the Hasidic kids. Like, my community is my community. It's not my white community. It's not my Cuban community.
Yeah,
it's not just my Dominican community. Like, it's my community as a whole. What makes up South Florida? We got a hodgepodge of shit here.
Yeah, but we have pockets. We have pockets, and you're not going to change them, okay? You're not going to go move into a neighborhood of all Hasidic Jews. You're not going to do it. It's not. You're not looking for a house in this neighborhood.
But Len, you also realize that the homogenization of America is real, and by I shouldn't say like we're blending. Like, and eventually, when you talk about your people, you're going to be Slovenian, Cuban, Dominican, Irish, and Venezuelan.
I'm a mutt. I looked at my ancestry today. I'm a mutt.
So then whose community do you belong to?
I guess it's the community that you relate to the most. I guess it's that.
But but your kid, like, to your point, your son Nick, your daughter Marin, like, that's what community is community. And we have to and that's why I'm saying teach everybody's history and how it relates to the building and the development and the growth of this country. Good, bad, and ugly, right? So guess what? Sometimes black folks are going to have to take it on the chin when it comes to the crack epidemic, right? You're going to have to take that one, period. When you talk about violence in a community, you're going to have to own that, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's no different than, you know, gangsters and mobsters and whatever else. You got to be willing to own the negative or the detrimental things that you've done to your own people.
You all have to man the fuck up.
Everybody.
Including the police forces, including everything.
Everybody.
Everything, you know.
But we got to teach it, Len. In order for people to man up, they got to know that it happened. They got to know that it was done and understand where other people are coming from. Like, that to me is how you find that. We talk about finding the middle ground. You can't find the middle if you can't take the time to put yourself in the other person's shoes and try to see it from their point of view.
No, I understand. I get that.
But it's easier to do if you have
I get
little
that,
bit
but
of
you're
background
not gonna take you know, a white kid from rural Georgia. You're not gonna take a white kid from rural Georgia and have him see through the eyes of a street kid from Atlanta. You're not gonna do it. You're not gonna educate that. You can't train that, and you can't expect that to happen.
Unless he goes and he spends some time there. Maybe we should do more exchange programs instead of foreign. Just intracommunal.
From the burbs to the hood, bitch.
Go intracommunal.
Burbs to the hood.
Intracommunal. Let's go. Switch it out. But no, I have a question for you though, because I know one of your points of contention is, you know, the eradication of history. We talked about the tearing down of monuments, especially in the South. But I have to ask you a question. Why are those monuments so important to people who had nothing to do with them? Like, you know, you're quick to say, did everybody kill the Indians? I don't feel guilty for what happened 300 years ago. So why do you take pride in something that somebody did 300 years ago? Like, why does the statue
Are they going to take down a Geronimo statue?
What?
Are they going to take down a Geronimo statue? Because he killed people.
This was his land, my man.
I feel you.
And he didn't lose the war.
He was the only undefeated.
Well, then no, you leave his statue up. I have a rule.
I just don't.
But I'm just saying, what is your, you know, like it's.
I mean, I don't have an issue with the Confederate flag. I don't. I just never have.
Come on, my man. How?
I just never have. It's never been a thing.
Because nobody tried to.
How about because nobody gave a shit? Because nobody tried to
lynch your great grandma.
How come? Because nobody gave a shit when it was on national television every Thursday night.
What are you talking about? Who didn't give a shit?
Who cared about the Dukes of Hazzard? Who cared about the Dukes of Hazzard? How long did the Dukes of Hazzard run?
I don't know. I've never watched an episode of the Dukes of Hazzard.
Really? They remade a movie. How about the one with...
Did they have the Confederate flag in it? The one with Jessica Simpson?
Yes. It's on the roof of the fucking car. It always has been.
No, that's probably... I bet it wouldn't be in 2022. It's what it stands for because it's what it represents. It's what it represents. They lost.
United States.
They lost, and you lost. So hang the flag of the country that you belong to. They tried to secede. Like, this is not...
I'm not saying hang the flag in any of the states. I'm not saying that, Kimmy.
But the people who rock it for very specific reasons. It's not Southern pride. And if it is Southern pride, it's pride for some really offensive shit.
See, that I don't think that, because I don't think those kids understand. I don't think those people understand how detrimental it was. I don't think they're learning the history of how bad it was. No, listen. I don't think they're learning the history of how bad people were treated.
Well, then that's why we need to teach it.
Yeah.
That's why, so thank you.
But again, I don't think all these symbolisms
You're not talking about a small number of people, though. You're not talking about, you're talking about close to 20% of the American population. And again, people who have been here a lot longer than some of the folks flying that flag. That's the shit that blows my mind. You've got people that want to stand for something that they have no ties to. They have no ties. I mean, if you can trace your family back to the Mayflower, and there's an incredible documentary out about a dude who can do exactly that. And he talks about breaking down the myth, right? Because they had a family that the whole history is like, oh, we had 100 slaves, really. They had 7, and we were so good to our slaves that literally, some of them stayed. One of them stayed. She was 90 and like blind. You know what I mean? He had to do all of these things. And his grandmother was a boss, ended up owning a shit ton of land, but she was racist until the day she died. So with that being said, it's like, I don't get it. Like, people that have this tie, like, that's one thing. Like, your family is literally the South. But there's a lot of folks that have they're Italian immigrants that got here in 1920.
Absolutely.
and came through Ellis Island rocking the Confederate flag. You don't get to stand on the my history. Get out of here.
Well,
Stupid.
My great-great-grandmother, my great-great-grandmother was 100% Cherokee.
Where's your reservation?
How about that?
Where's your
How about
casino
those
money?
cheekbones, honey?
Where's your casino money? No?
You have to be, I think
It's a quarter,
a
isn't it?
16th or something,
Oh.
maybe a little more, an eighth. You have to be an eighth. I just missed it, by the way.
I was gonna say.
But you have to be a certain
Did you say
percentage.
your great great grandmother or you just your
Great,
grandmother?
maybe great.
Damn.
My mom's grandmother. So it's my great great grandmother. Right? No.
No, it's just your.
No.
It's just your great grandmother.
Yeah, no. Beyond that.
Okay, so
Beyond
like
that.
your
One
great-
beyond that.
okay.
Great great grandmother. Because I just missed it. We checked. But again, that's my history. Again, I grew up in South Florida, from 1967. South Florida was the South and still has pockets of the South ingrained in it. So,
Yeah.
this was that deep South.
But like you said, if you want to use the ignorance is bliss,
No, I don't want to use that.
That's why history is so important. And that's
Yeah.
why teaching it the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God.
Let's not bring God into this.
That's all we're
a whole
asking
nother
for.
issue.
Teach about that too.
That's a whole nother issue.
But yeah,
all right, we need to wrap this up.
Yeah, it's wrapped.
It's
Teach history, good, bad, and the
Ugly.
ugly. Just teach the damn truth. And maybe, just maybe, that'll help us find a little bit more common ground. But fighting it is only making shit worse.
Yep. And take responsibility for your own shit.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
All right, there you go. That's the ManTFup podcast for the week. You can follow us absolutely everywhere. Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeart, Pandora, Buzzsprout, anywhere you can get a podcast. Lenny posts this. You can also follow us on all social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. Like, share, subscribe, follow, all of it. Do it. ManTFup, ManTFupTV.com, ManTFupTV on all the socials. Right? Did I get it right? And go ahead,
Yeah.
Len. I know you want to. I can see it on your face. I can see it.
Email all your comments to KimmyB at ManTFupTV.com.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.